In 1951, when I went with my little letter to Chicago, along with a lot of other people, we were lined up in a building up in Chicago. And at that time, we were told to, every other person was told to take one step forward, and the others were told to take one step backwards. I happened to be one of the ones that took the step backwards, and I was, I guess, lucky in a way, because the front row ended up being Marines, the back row ended up being Army. And the next thing I knew, I was on a train going on the North Shore to Fort Sheridan for the processing work that took place. The sergeant that was in charge, he said, "You people have a 50-50 chance of going to Europe or 50-50 chance of going to the Far East." And then they asked me if I spoke or understood any foreign language. I think I gave them the wrong answer, and I said yes. Because after I said yes, all of a sudden I found myself being sent with new orders to the Far East. Ended up, I was with the, it was a MP battalion that was out of Texas. It was the 556th MP battalion, and we were assigned to PW Camp number 2, which was the, at that time, and I believe it still was at the, when I left, the largest PW camp on the mainland of Korea. The only other PW camp that was larger, probably in size, was on the island of Kojo. And but we had enough prisoners as it was. We had 3 compounds, and they consisted of North Koreans, Chinese, and women. So we had a little bit of a mixture of all. The prisoners, they took great joy in antagonizing the MPs and the ROC soldiers that were assigned to us. We had a ROC group that was part of our security also, and they took great pleasure in chanting, and they would chant all night long, and as one compound would quit, then the next one would start. So it was continuous, and it was like having it wasn't music, it was just a lot of hollering and chanting, and they were flying their flags. Where they got them, I don't know, but they had them. And they were making, I guess they took some of the poles that were in stretchers and used them as flag poles. Towards the tail end, which was coming close to the Panmunjom talks, at that time we had about 26,000 prisoners from all of the camps that had been released by the guards. And at that point, they pulled the ROC group out, which was the Republic of North Korea, I mean South Korea, their army. They were taken out. We were given back our weapons, which we normally did not have, and we were told that we should all arm ourselves, because now the prisoners were actually running around in the villages. So it ended up that we were all told, go get an M1 rifle, which we would only have if we were on guard duty, and if you weren't on guard duty, you had to turn your weapon in. So all of a sudden, our little tent ended up with, in the crossbows of the army cot, each of us had an M1 rifle with 1 round in the chamber. It would have been pure hell for anybody to have walked into that at night or any other time without us knowing about it. I know we did go out and we did round up some of them and bring them back in. Had to repair the fences, but we stayed that way, and after that we had a lot of visitors, including Stevenson, who came. He was the Secretary of Defense, I believe, at that time. He was there with a whole entourage of the people, and they must have had about 10 Chevys that would drive these people to the camps or wherever else they were going. We had officers from the country of Thailand, and I know that there were a lot of other countries that were represented there. The Lynx, which was our ship that we came home on, was it was the first time I had volunteered for anything. As I was getting ready to get on board ship, there was another fellow on board. He called down, he says, "Hey, volunteer." I says, "Volunteer for what?" He says, "This is good duty." He says, "All you have to do is once a day sweep out the barber shop." I says, "You got to be kidding." He says, "No, and we'll eat and we'll sleep with the swabbies." And of course, knowing what I knew before, you know, how it is between the naval personnel and the Army personnel, it sounded pretty good. So I ended up on my tour back to the United States cleaning out the barber shop. Then when they needed some supplies, we'd go down into the hold of the ship, bring the supplies back up, and that was it. But we ate with the naval personnel, and we slept on decent bunks, which was better than the hammocks that you would have on the other part of the ship.